So we are chatting to Professor Jean Greyling, who's the head of the Department of Computing Sciences at Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Welcome to the show.
Good to chat to you.
Give us some background on your department. What is it that you do?
We offer undergrad and postgrad degrees, undergrad BSc and BCom degrees. We're one of two departments in the country that's a hybrid department, meaning that our degrees covers the disciplines of computer science as well as information systems. And then when our students complete their undergrads, they can obviously carry on with honors, masters, and PhD. We're situated on the south campus of the Port Elizabeth NMMU. We have about 30 staff members, academic, technical, and administrative. And our students, mainly the undergrads and the postgrads, obviously have access to 11 labs, which is about 350 PCs. And we have around 2,000 students going through those labs on a weekly basis.
2,000 learners going through a week. How do you manage that?
With a lot of grace. The bulk of those students are your end user students. They come from all, I think, 6 of the 7 faculties on campus to learn word processing, Excel spreadsheets, etc. And we have a very big sub-department that does the end user programming, computers, modules, etc. So they've got a lot of student assistants, staff managing that. And then our core students, the students that are doing our degrees, in total probably about 200 to 300.
Okay. So what are the job opportunities in computing?
That is the reason why we're doing this interview and why I want people to listen to what I want to say. And that's the reason why I'm traveling all over the Eastern Cape. Annually, I go as far as George, Queenstown, East London, schools throughout Port Elizabeth, our region. Because and I never can think of a better word, there's a desperation out there amongst the industry, desperately looking for good qualified computer programmers. It's desperate in South Africa, but it's actually desperate globally. I think one might say India produces a lot of programmers. But most of the countries where our students want to work, there's a desperate shortage.
Why is that, though? I mean, why do you see the lack coming through, specifically with computer programmers?
There's a lot of discussion on this. It has a historical backdrop. When I studied computers in the mid-80s, it was a very exclusive direction. Only a few guys, I think we were 25 in our first year class. And then we went into the 90s where the Y2K was ahead of us. Internet took off and it was all these huge e-commerce sites. And we saw a huge growth in interest in computing degrees in the 90s. I remember having classes of 500. And that was a global trend. And then on the 1st of January 2000, nothing happened. There was no Y2K, anything. And the big .com crisis happened just after that, when a lot of e-commerce sites bombed out in America. That, in a sense, created a very negative perception about our discipline. But that's now 15 years ago, but I said it's a historical backdrop to it. But other issues also happened. Again in the 90s, and then even more after 2000 with mobile phones, computers became a household article like a toaster. So for parents to think, I've got a bright boy, he's going to use computers as a career, it's kind of impossible to think because everyone can do computers. What kind of exclusive careers can there be in computers? And why would a bright young mind go and study computers and not engineering or accounting? So we're struggling with that perception. But then we're also in this anomaly that the other side of the coin, millions of people on this continent and in South Africa come from areas where they never have any contact with people that work with computers. They sometimes we have students in our class that comes from homes that don't even have electricity. So for them, this concept of making a career out of computers is so distant that they don't consider. So we either have the people that have too much computers or the guys that have too little. And then we need to compete with the well-known professions of accounting, engineering, medical doctor. I always tell when I go to schools, when I was in grade 1 and my parents saw that I had a mathematical ability, my grandfather would put me on his lap and he would say to me, you need to become an engineer or accountant. Now, I cannot see one grandfather saying to a grade 1, you need to become a chief information officer or a systems analyst, where the profession careers are so well known in the public the careers in our discipline are not known. And where you become an accountant or a doctor or a lawyer, in computer science you can become one of 300 different jobs. So it's not well defined. So it's a very vague thing for matriculants to think, I'm going to study computers. They want to say, I will become. And I always tell my first years, you won't be able to say that until 1 January after your honours, when you actually arrive somewhere. No one can say, I will become a, when you study computers. So all of these things make it very complicated for learners. The other thing that is a problem is only some schools, because it's a very expensive subject, offer IT as a subject, programming. So we find, and then slightly more, but not all schools offer CAT, computer application technology. So you find a lot of these kids at our schools that they can't choose any of these subjects, and they just assume it's a prerequisite to study. So they don't consider computer science. Okay. And then we have the problem of I'm very sensitive when I say that, but institutions offering mediocre IT qualifications. And those guys do not get employed. And they create this perception in the country that computing qualifications will not get me employed. I once was on public national radio talking about this shortage, and a young guy phoned in on SAFM, and he said, the professor's talking nonsense. 80% of my class was not employed. How can he tell me there's a skill shortage? So we're struggling with that concept as well, where I said right at the start, they need good qualified programmers from good institutions.
But is it not also a case of the lack of education about the importance of computer programmers and the big need? I mean, how do we package it and how do we make it more attractive?
Well, you're probably more of a marketer than me, so we need guidance on this. What we do in our ignorance as academics, we try to go to as many as possible schools. We try to talk to the kids. We try to bring them on campus to get them involved with what's going on in the department. We try to do stuff like this. We're on Facebook. I'm going to be on Twitter soon. So we're trying to all the possible media, but we need to do more. There's still not enough. Because the other thing we're fighting against, and this is the old, I always say the James Bond syndrome from the 60s, where the computer scientist is this nerd with a white jacket that hides behind a door and never talks to anyone.
Q.
So the kids think, oh, I'm a social being. I like to interact with people, so I can't do computers. Where the reality at this stage is just the opposite. Okay. Most guys in computers are social beings working in teams the whole time.
You spoke about schools earlier, so do you get enough students enrolling for your degrees?
Unfortunately not. Our graduates, when they're in honours, they often get 6, 7 job offers. Companies are desperate. You'll get companies saying to me, listen, if you can send me 50 programmers tomorrow morning, I'll employ them. Someone told me that last week. So no, we definitely are not getting enough students.
Okay. So now you say that there are all these job opportunities, so why are you not flooded with registrations? What seems to be the problem?
It's kind of a summary of what I've just said. It's the perception of what happened at .com, etc. So yes, it's a lot of perceptions we need to fight with.
All right, so moving on to some of your students who go and work at software developing houses, what are the typical job opportunities at these companies?
The software developing houses seems to be 2 categories. The one is a company that's developed a product and they keep on working on that product. A good example for us is Corbitech in Cape Town that employs many of our students, and one of their best known products is Property 24.
Right.
So they maintain that product. Then we have ACI in Cape Town that started a product called Postillion. That's kind of the backbone of many of the financial banking systems in the country. So they maintain that product. Then you get software developing companies that do ad hoc projects for companies. That will be mainly your smaller companies. There's a company in Port Elizabeth, for example, that has done software for motocross racing and for guest houses, etc. Now, whether they're either of those two, what they normally have is a certain set of careers where most of our students end up. So, for example, if I've got a company that needs to write programs for people, I always say a hospital in Kimberley phones me and they say, listen, we've got a problem in this one ward. Do you think a program can solve that? So then they would send the first career, and this is one of where the biggest shortage is called a business analyst. You would go into the business on behalf of the programming company and go and analyze the business and find out where can the computer program add value to this business. So the analogy there is a doctor trying to do a diagnosis of what's wrong. And then he comes back. Then he hands over what he's found over to the systems analyst that knows the bigger picture. Because when you solve a problem with a computer, you don't just write programs. You need to have internet, you need to have LAN cables, you need to have printers, etc. So the systems analyst puts together the big picture. Only at that stage do they put together a team that's going to solve this. Now this team consists of a project manager. For the school kids, I would say that's your rugby captain, the guy that drives this whole project. He then employs 3, 4, 5 software developers, programmers, that physically writes the code. And then they also have, obviously, they call them sometimes a code tester or a quality tester that tests the code after it's been written. So that's typically a team that you would find in a software developing house. They sometimes jokingly call them 2 pizza teams. It's a team that you can feed 11 at night with 2 pizzas. So they're never bigger than 8 or 10 in that kind of team. So that's your, and if you go and look at the job market, the biggest shortage is your business analyst, because he needs to have this knowledge of computers and business. Your software developer, the guy that can really write good quality programs, and your code tester, the quality tester that has the ability to look at this program and find the bugs and see where it can be more efficient. Interesting, I can't say this is scientifically proven, but there's a vibe that ladies are the best business analysts. They seem to have skills that us as men don't have.
I've always maintained that they are the better at multitasking than men are.
Yeah. so that's then obviously there's other careers we can talk about.
All right. So interesting that you should mention the fact that there's a shortage of business analysts and code testers as well, because the very thing that I've spotted in a lot of newspapers and especially in the job market, those jobs seems to come through quite often, and not many people respond to them quick enough.
Yes.
Because of the lack that you are now referring to.
There's a lack of skills around.
Okay, so now we know that not many people know that you can do a BCom degree in computer science. Is that?
Yes, that's an interesting trend. We're trying to find out what's going on here. I think the government is doing a lot of emphasis about science.
Okay.
So we're finding that every year we're getting more and more BSc registrations and less BCom registrations for computer science.
Okay.
Which is very sad, because I've already mentioned that business analyst is a very skilled skill in our discipline. And the business analysts typically are the guys that do BCom with accounting, business management, economics, and computer science. So this combination of especially computers and accounting is becoming more and more needed in the modern economy. Chartered accountant. We often find the guys that are brilliant with accounting at school, but they also love computers. Now, not many of them know that there is that option of majoring in computer science and accounting. You actually then become a chartered accountant, but you've got this computer science knowledge as part of your package.
Right.
Computer auditor. Now, just the word of the job description says you can't do auditing without having a computer background. And then one of probably the best paid job in our discipline is that of the ERP consultant. SAP, Syspro, all of those huge ERP packages. Now, these consultants are earning sometimes 2,000 Rand an hour at the moment. And for them, they need a background in computers, accounting. They need to start to understand ERP, etc. So those are the main jobs linked to the BCom degree. And if I could talk to any school kid that's interested in the commercial subjects, accounting, economics, business management, business economics, consider making computers your career.
Are you then not really looking at as an opportunity to go to schools and practice this whole religion of what is needed basically at school level, so that when they come to university, they are prepared and ready to face?
As I said, we try and do that as often as possible, but we're open to schools inviting us. Okay. So I've travelled, as I said, Queenstown, George, Craddock, I've even went up to Joburg to talk to schools about this, because we need to get this message to the kids as well as to the parents.
Are you looking across the board, or are you specifically honing in on certain areas, rural areas, outlying areas?
Literally across the board. Obviously, we have our well-known IT schools in the Eastern Cape. That's our biggest feeder. But we need to get the schools where there's good mathematics, good accounting. They don't need to have IT, so we like talking to them as well.
Okay, we spoke earlier about the women who are better skilled or better at multitasking. But you also have something here labeled as sexy careers. What are these sexy careers that you refer to?
I use sexy kind of just as a tongue in the cheek. It's the careers that everyone's talking about these days, the buzzword careers. When you ask a kid in grade 11, what do you want to become, they normally mention these careers. And I need to mention them. There's the games programmer. All kids like playing games. And there's a lot of money and a lot of opportunities in games programming, but we always need to warn them. You cannot become a good games programmer without strong computers, strong mathematics, and often strong physics. And they don't realize that. Computer animation. There's the guys Triggerfish in Cape Town. We collaborate with them. They produce these big animation movies. And you can just imagine the computer science behind that, storing all that animation. Mobile app development is obviously huge. Some of the better known apps, I can't mention the companies now that we hear about on radio, literally cost 1.2 billion to write. You won't get a company easy to write you a simple app for under 100,000 rand. So we are finding that our students are actually starting their own businesses while they're studying, writing mobile apps.
Okay.
Big data. As companies get more and more computers, they store more and more data, and they need to analyze that data to get information from that data. And that's a huge career opportunity, combining computers and statistics, for example, these days. And then entrepreneurship. Anyone listening to this interview must have heard of Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Shuttleworth. And again, the combination of computer science and often with accounting can lead you into starting your own business, literally in your dad's back garage. James Pierce is our best example. He studied BSc here with us 10 years ago, started in Mill Park. He now owns and runs SMS Portal. Last time I saw it was a turnover of 300 million all across the world. Two young guys did their BCom RAT with us, Chartered Accounting, Mo Kasim and Dev Hubert, started the code group in Newton Park. They're now employing, I think, 15 programmers working across the world.
Wow.
So entrepreneurship is a huge opportunity.
Okay, let's look at why people enjoy their careers in computing. What is it that makes it so special?
I once discussed this with a colleague from Rhodes University, and he said, we're actually doing a very unethical thing. We're training guys for very hard work, for long hours. It is a stressful industry. If you want a peaceful life, don't become a programmer. But they won't do that if there aren't the advantages. And I took a group of my top students the other day to companies in Cape Town, and we asked them this: why do you enjoy your job? And these are the answers they came up with. First of all, obviously, the salaries. Our students graduate and they start off with 20 to 25,000 starting salaries. There are one or two companies in the country that's now extreme. They're employing fresh graduates at 45,000, but that's extreme salaries. But these guys are earning good money. They can work anywhere in the world. It's a passport. A programming skill is as relevant in Port Elizabeth as in New York. So we've got graduates literally on all the continents, working all over. An interesting thing they mentioned is the concept of flexibility. You're in charge of your own career. Because there's so many opportunities, because there's such a shortage of skill, you're the king of your castle. You can determine where you're going. You're not a medical doctor that will work at a hospital for 20 years. So you can choose. You also have, I mentioned that company in PE that writes programs. And they've written programs for motocross. They've written programs for guest houses. They've written programs for squash clubs. So you have a flexibility in the domain that you can get involved with. Programming goes across the whole society. So every 6 months you'll be in another domain and you'll learn new things. And then, very critical, they say, it's lovely to write a program that adds value to society. The one company that employs our students, ACI in Cape Town, They write the financial systems for banks, for the retailers. So the one guy said to me once, Prof, when I go to a Pick and Pay and I pay, there's a till slip coming out. There's a code at the top. And he said, I wrote that. That concept of I'm writing stuff that's significant, it drives these guys. And then lastly, the places you work with. I just need to mention, our students are working at Microsoft, Google, Facebook, Amazon, British Airways, MultiChoice, Alan Gray. There's an energy there that you're going to find difficulty in replicating it in other companies. And they really like that. And then there's the multidisciplinary aspect. If you walked into MultiChoice's computer labs, they're working with graphic designers, they're working with journalists. There's that vibe that you don't really get with many other careers.
Are these all documented? Is there any way that you could use that perhaps as a marketing tool to showcase the message that you're trying to send?
Well, this is what we're doing now, is documenting it.
No.
And we've got flyers,
Okay.
etc. But we're doing our best to document it in various forms.
Okay. All right, so now you also believe the quality of one's qualification depends on the institution you study at. Why would you say learners should consider NMMU Computing Sciences?
If you would excuse me just doing some marketing, because I believe this is important. I mentioned earlier that guys get computing qualifications that do not make them employable. So I would say to anyone, whether you're deciding on computers or law or accounting, make sure that the institution you're going to is producing quality work. If obviously you have the school matric marks to get into that institution. So from our side, I've already mentioned our labs and our PCs. Our students have gone to some of the major universities in the country, and our labs and PCs are on par and often better. The students have better facilities than they would find in some of the bigger universities. 350 PCs is a lot of PCs. We have a dedicated staff. We've got 11 members on staff with PhDs. Last time I looked, this made us one of the best qualified computing departments in the whole country. If you have 11 PhD staff members, you can imagine the capacity amongst that staff. The success of our students, and the proof is in the eating. So for me as an HOD, it's important to see what do our students do while they study. A month or two ago, Kahodi Ayonkoya, one of our PhDs, won a global competition on using big data for mining, and he flew to Europe to go and talk at a conference. Our programming team last year was in the top 10 in Africa. Our students, when they do research papers at national and international conferences, since 2005, we've actually had a best paper, I think, annually at a well-known conference in the country and across the world. Our last one was last year in Venice, in Italy. We're one of the leading departments in developing mobile apps. From third year, our students start developing mobile apps, and we've won national awards with the apps that our students invent. And then a few months ago, our students took part in a 50,000 Rand competition developing, using the Raspberry Pi to address issues in society. And the winning team, a bunch of third years, won 30,000 Rand for a very innovative product that measures the use of your energy in your house, and puts it on a website and does statistical analysis. So when I see my students doing these things, I say to myself, we as a department can be proud of our students. The fact that we're a hybrid model, computer science and information systems, I think it's us and the University of Free State, the only universities that have that model. And our employers say they like students that have both disciplines in their package. It's critical for us to work closely with industry. We have an industry advisory board that meets once a year. We have often guest lectures. We have lunchbox lectures where industry come and talk to our students. We go on industry visits. And these are not palooka companies. It's the names I mentioned just now. So they're cutting edge. And then very important for us is the holistic approach. It's not just about the technical skill. It's the soft skill. It's the ability to work in teams, to manage stuff like that. Some of the people might have watched our Random Acts of Kindness video that went viral across the world. That was a team that was said, a bunch of programmers were said, do a social awareness project so you can learn to work in teams. And this emphasis is right through our degrees. And then lastly, the employability of our students. If you go into an institution, ask them, where did your graduates go and work last year? Now, I do a lot of effort every year around graduation to see where our graduates are working. And it's never below 90% of our students are already employed 3 months after they finish their degree, which I think is important. You don't want to go and spend, 100,000 Rand a year if you take the whole cost of studying over 3 years and then you can't find a job. So all of these things would say to me, studying at us won't be a mistake.
Okay. So looking at what we've spoken about now, you're also proud of the research being conducted in the department. Explain to us about that.
First of all, why is it important for a school kid to worry about research? You might say that's PhD stuff. But research is another way of measuring the health of an academic department. So when we talk about that, it's one thing you need to ask, am I going to a healthy department? Now, we've seen a huge growth in our research outputs over the past 10 years. We've gone from about 8 masters and PhD students to over 30 in the past 5-6 years. And I've already mentioned staff capacity. With 11 PhDs on staff, it helps. The quality of students we're getting. This year we had the top IT students from most of the IT schools in the province that started as first years. Our research infrastructure, I showed you just now, our usability lab. I think we're one of 3 universities in the country with a usability lab, an eye tracker, various mobile devices that we do research on. Our computational intelligence lab, where we play around with evolutionary robots. You saw our spider and our snake. These guys are doing cutting edge research. It's in layman's terms, computers teaching themselves to think. Ubiquitous computing. Now, that's a word I didn't know about 3 years ago. Now I can at least spell it. But it has to do with a smart house. You walk into a room and the whole room starts talking to you. It's not just the keyboard. And you interact with your computer. So those are some of the things. And for the ubiquitous computing, we're working with Kinex, with the Oculus Rift, with various mobile devices, with a multi-touch screen imported from Australia. So that's the kind of stuff we play around. And then lastly, international collaboration. We're doing great work with the University of Oldenburg in Germany on the sustainability of the environment, on IT entrepreneurship. So those are kind of a quick overview of our research successes in the department.
You mentioned in the last bit about the collaboration with Germany. Do you have any more that you can share with us?
Well, the projects I'm mentioning now are running projects, or they terminated end of last year. The next big project is an international conference, first time out of Europe, combined with Germany. And then we're looking at a next phase of project where we want to bring academia and industry closer to each other, where we start offering courses for industry and industry starts offering courses for our students.
Okay.
And this would be our next wave of collaboration with universities in Europe.
Which is so important.
Critical.
All right, so now your students are involved with various multidisciplinary projects. Care to share some of that with us?
I mentioned just now that the fact that you can work in different domains is why our graduates, our employees, enjoy their job. And it's becoming more and more evident in what our students are doing that this is also now true on campus. To give you a quick idea, we're working with mechatronics engineering on the robots I was talking about just now. We're working with physics in the big SKA project in the Karoo, with statistics predicting the energy usage for Eskom, etc. With economics, analyzing data for the huge banks in South Africa. With agriculture, predicting the grain price, for example. That's a big data challenge, and agriculture is very interested where computers can get involved. With engineering, we've got a student in Germany right now on the electric motor vehicles and what our computer science can contribute to make these cars more efficient. Education, the Govan Mbeki maths unit on our campus does a huge work in the whole Eastern Cape in uplifting maths education at school. And our students have been involved with that for the past 5-6 years, using mobile phones, Mixit, etc. And then the business school, we work closely with our business school, which is one of the best in the country. For example, a research project on marketing Port Elizabeth as a preferred destination for tourism. And as a department, we're involved with that as well.
Could we possibly see an Elon Musk come out of NMMU? Could we possibly see another Mark Zuckerberg given all the resources that you have available right now?
Definitely. And these names my first years here from day one, because they need to be inspired. We need to understand that the Elon Musks and those guys, there's a small percentage of the successful computer scientists. They're kind of the superstars.
Right.
But definitely, our students have that ability. We're doing a lot of effort in planting the seed of entrepreneurship with our students, because those Elon Musk and those guys are computer guys, but they're also the entrepreneurial spirit. So I mentioned James Pierce. There's a few other names I could mention. They're not as known as Mark Zuckerberg yet, but that's my dream and my vision. We've got everything in place. We just need to find the right personalities to go for it.
So why do your students choose NMMU?
This is interesting. I went on a career marketing stint to Gauteng once. And I just one morning asked my first years, now why did you choose NMMU? From the horse's mouth. And this is a summary of things that they said. That's why they chose us as a department and as an institution. Firstly, the reputation. We're building up a very positive reputation in the province and across the country. The safe and calm campus. I've been on this campus now for 30 years. If we've had 2 political unrest days in 30 years, it's been a lot. Somehow we've managed to transform this campus without causing tension, and it's a very good environment to study. Friendly. You won't believe if parents bring their kids onto campus, that's one of the first things they mention. There's a friendly vibe. We're away from the noise. A lot of guys come from Gauteng and Cape Town, and they say they prefer the quietness compared to having peak traffic trying to get to a campus in Joburg or etc. Easy to get around. It's not a huge campus. You can walk literally from where you want to be. The beautiful campus, we often say this, we're on a game reserve. It's nothing funny to see Springbok while you're going to class. Cost effective. I still think we're one of the most cost effective universities giving good qualification in the country. And then one of my guys from Gauteng just wrote on his paper, big bold face, we've got the freaking ocean. I don't need to say more.
I did mention earlier when we were going out for lunch that it seems that NMMU is cut off from the rest of Nelson Mandela Bay. It's like you're in a world of your own, doing things according to a specific custom which is only known to the learners and the professors. And I think that is something unique that you find here at NMMU. Am I correct in saying that?
What you're saying is again a coin with 2 sides. Obviously, we don't want to be called an ivory tower. But the one side of the coin is, we went to a company the other day to look at a possible master's research, and the only thing this guy could say to us, but this is not financially viable, etc., etc. Now, obviously, that's important. But you also need a lab kind of environment where students are allowed to experiment. And so, on the one side, when you say we removed from society, I say that's good, because we need to create a scientific environment. On the other side, I would say it's bad. We don't want our students to be disjoint from what's happening in the world. And that's why we make effort to get them into industry, to see what the challenges are, etc. So what you've said is good and bad.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take both.
Okay.
Because we need to see the value in both.
But in order to exercise your creativity, you need to be away from the noise. You need to be cut off,
You need to be
disconnected in order to reach your full potential with your creativity.
If you talk to any master's or PhD student, they'll tell you the best work is being done after midnight. I once arrived in the office and I said to a master's student, "You here early?" He said, "No, I'm still here." And I said, "Do you have a problem?" He said, "No, I just found something very exciting, and sleep was not more exciting." You need that environment.
It's been fascinating chatting to you. Give us some details on how we can reach you. Where do we find you?
Yeah. It's difficult to say it on audio, but the easiest is website. Just you Google NMMU Computing Sciences, you'll find our website. You go into Facebook, you say NMMU Computing Sciences, you'll find our Facebook page, which is daily active. And then if someone wants to write down a telephone number, 041 504 2247.
Professor Greyling, you're the head of the Department of Computing Sciences. Thank you for chatting to us.
Thank you very much.